read with me, friends, the book of Esther. It is uncertain who wrote this book, but Mordecai, many say, could have been the writer. The book of Esther is, in one sense, the most remarkable book in the Bible. And that is because the name of God is not mentioned in this book at all. There is not even a divine title or a pronoun that refers to God. Yet, the heathen king is mentioned 192 times. Prayer is not mentioned. It wouldn't be because God himself is omitted. The book of Esther is never quoted in the New Testament. There's not even a casual reference of it. But the superstition of the heathen is mentioned. The good days, and we'll be introduced to a pagan heathen court of a great world monarch who ruled over the then known world for several splendid years. This is indeed an unusual book. It is an unusual book for another reason too. It is named after a woman. Actually, there are only 2 books in the Bible named after women, Esther and Ruth. The theme of both these books is romance. The theme of both of them is redemptive romance. It is a love story. We love him because he first loved us. He gave himself for us because he loves us. The book of Esther is also the romance of providence. God directs his material universe in which we live today by his providence. In fact, it's the way he directs all of his creation. In the book of Esther, God has hidden his face from them. But we can say God stands in the shadows, keeping watch over his own. So the book of Esther, friends, gives us a record of a group of people outside of God's holy will. Now, when Cyrus made the decree, after the 70 years of Babylonian captivity, that the people might return to the land, not all of them returned. Less than 60,000 returned. And we have had the record of that in Ezra, Nehemiah, and in the 2 prophetic books, Haggai and Zechariah. But what about the largest segment that did not return from the land of captivity to the land of freedom? We have a similar condition even today. When we speak of the nation of Israel, well, there are probably 2 million who have returned there. But there are actually 16 million who are scattered throughout the world today. So that actually the majority are out of the land. What is evident, and I use it merely as a parallel to illustrate what it was in that day, several million of these people did not return to the land after the decree of Cyrus. Do we have any record of the people, this large number, that did not return to the land? Yes. And that record is the book of Esther. It is recorded here. In other words, we just have 1 page out of their history, 1 small item of their experience, 1 scrap and shred of evidence in this voluminous record. This little book of Esther becomes all important for this reason. What happened to those who were taken into captivity and did not return to the promised land? In this book, we see God in a new way. Although the people are not in his will, we see God in his faithfulness directing them. How? Purely by his providence. The book of Esther provides us with the greatest illustrations of the providence of God. Although his name is never mentioned, we see his providence in each and every page of this wonderful little book, the book of Esther. The first chapter opens out with a history of the pagan nation, a pagan nation which is inserted into the Word of God for a very definite purpose, to teach the providence of God, the history of a Gentile pagan nation. We shall see this as we turn the pages of the story. It begins with the law of a heathen kingdom, and then a difficulty, matrimonial difficulty. It was a very personal affair that arose in the kingdom, but it had international repercussions. Esther chapter 1 verse 1. This is what happened during the time of Xerxes. The Xerxes who ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush. Kush is Ethiopia. First, we should understand that Xerxes is not the name of the man but the title. It means High Father or Venerable King, as the word Caesar is a title and does not identify a man. So is Xerxes. It does not identify this Persian king in secular history. There is quite a divergence of opinion concerning his identity. Xerxes is the man who made the last great effort of the East to overcome the West. It was a tremendous effort. And Xerxes reigned over a kingdom, a great empire from India to Ethiopia, Kush. It extended throughout the Mediterranean, the Fertile Crescent, which was at the very heartland of the world. Verse 2. At that time, King Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Susa. And in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials, the military leaders of Persia and Media. The princes and the nobles of the provinces were present. Verses 2 and 3. This banquet that we just read of here in verses 2 and 3 would pale into insignificance anything that man might attempt in our day. Imagine the invitees. There were 127 provinces in his kingdom. And out of each of these, he brought a delegation. How many I don't know, but a huge delegation, I believe. So that he had present probably 1,000 or 2,000 people at a time for his banquet. It was a great event in the history of the world. How can God get in on a scene like this? How can God get into a scene like this? Well, he will by his providence. God stands, I said, in the shadows, keeping watch over his own. Verse 4. For a full 180 days he displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. His kingdom and his majesty. He displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom, the splendor and the glory of his majesty. The banquet revealed the wealth, the luxury, and the regal character of this oriental court. The reason for this seems quite obvious. He had called in all of his princes and all of his rulers from every corner of his kingdom that he might win their wholehearted support for the military campaign to capture Greece and to make himself the supreme ruler of the world of that day. And of course, he almost succeeded in that attempt. Xerxes wanted his princes and rulers to know that he was able to pay for the war he was contemplating. He displayed the wealth of his kingdom by giving this great banquet, this great pagan feast. The banquet was pagan from the beginning to the end, completely godless. When these days were over, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days in the enclosed garden of the king's palace, for all the people from the least to the greatest who were in the citadel of Susa. Xerxes brought the banquet to a climax in the last 7 days. Apparently, he brought in a great number of people for the final 7 days in the court of the garden. The garden had hangings of white and blue linen, fastened with cords of white linen and purple material, to silver rings on marble pillars, hangings of white and blue linen, cords of white linen and purple material, to silver rings on marble pillars. Can you imagine it? There were couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement, of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. All these stones, including the beautiful hangings, tell us of his amazing wealth of his kingdom. It was a gaudy display. The ruins of those palaces still testify to the richness of Persia. Notice, friends, there were couches of gold and silver. Imagine sitting on gold and silver. A mosaic pavement, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Totally a vulgar, wanton display of wealth. Now verse 7. Wine was served in goblets of gold, sitting on gold, drinking from gold, each goblet different from the other. And the royal wine was abundant, in keeping with the king's liberality. This banquet ended in drinks. Wine was served in goblets of gold. Everyone was asked to drink from the king's wine. Now verse 8. By the king's command, each guest was allowed to drink in his own way. For the king instructed all the wine stewards to serve each man what he wished. Once again, each guest was allowed to drink in his own way. I wonder what it meant, but I think each guest, whatever drink he wanted to drink, he could drink. Even these pagan, oriental rulers who had absolute sovereignty never forced anyone to drink, although they themselves were given to it, like this man Xerxes was. We shall see how he retards because of his drinking. Now you notice verse 9. Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. So the king is entertaining his guests, and the queen is giving a banquet for the women in the royal palace, the palace of King Xerxes. The men brought their wives, but they did not go to the same banquet in that day. It was a breach of social custom for men and women to attend the same feast. So the queen also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. But remember, friends, the whole reason for this banquet was that Xerxes display the vast wealth of his kingdom. He wanted to strut, he wanted to show off his vast wealth and the splendor and the glory of his majesty. He wanted to strut, a very dangerous thing to do. Just when we think we finished off pride, just when we turn to accept the congratulations, pride, my friend, stabs us in the back. We should never consider pride dead before we are. Kill pride before pride kills you. God bless you.